speaking of the interconnectedness between the three biggest components of our society, which of course is big agriculture, big pharma, and of course, big oil, Steve Donziger is not only an attorney, he is a champion of climate justice, successfully sued Chevron, one of the biggest polluters on the planet.
And make it, well, and also there's an intersection between what we're talking about and indigenous communities, because we're talking about, this was in Ecuador.
Right.
And this was on behalf of the indigenous community in Ecuador. I don't know the name. We're going to find out.
Well, you're the attorney and he's an attorney. So the attorneys are going to speak. And
yeah, but I'm an attorney that hasn't practiced in a long time and partakes in the cannabis.
Yeah, but
so
you never
we're not, you know,
well, you know what?
the brain cells are not what they once were.
But for somebody that we have a hell of a lot of respect for, and
you know, we love whistleblowers and people that speak truth to power. And by the way, let it be known that this whole case, we're going to talk with Steve about this.
Yes.
Like, is just this ridiculous. I mean, I even heard him refer to it as a kangaroo court situation. Like, this is the most ridiculous prosecution thing.
Stephen, you've been doing this long enough. I think you know that our courts have been heavily compromised, to say the least. But we welcome you to Generational Change. We're very excited to have you here.
Wait, we're not letting him come on without me prefacing with, okay, thank you for finally leaving Katie Halper's show. It was fun watching you on Katie. I actually texted her.
Jen and Katie are friends.
I texted her and I said, you know, he was supposed to be on here. So I don't know, but thank you, Katie. Thank you. And I also want to point out to everybody that you
should have brought Roger Waters.
Yes,
with you.
had you brought Roger Waters with you, it would have been a very good, nice little peace offering.
Probably jump on if you wanted him. I can call him. You want me to?
I don't know if I could handle that.
No, why not? Go ahead. Let's have a little fun.
Let me see.
Okay, then I have to call my husband in here because he'll flip out.
And even though we're just getting started and we're going to move this all around social media, Steve, if you want to retweet the live feed, I first want to tip of the hat to Marianne Williamson and especially to Susan Sarandon, who have put themselves out there for you. And, you know, especially the fact that Susan is willing to do it, knowing that it really puts her at odds with a lot of people in the line of work that she's in. You know, what more can you say? No, she just, again, completely admirable. And again, I was aware of this, but I didn't really fully grasp everything that was going on until, you know, Crystal and Sagar had them on to talk about this case. I mean, it really brought everything to light. And while I think a lot of people understand the power of big oil in the United States, I don't think they fully understand just how ruthless they can be if you get in their way. And so if you could talk about that right off the bat, the ruthlessness of Chevron because you got in their way, what that's been all about.
Well, thank you. And I apologize for being late. I didn't know that you knew I was on Katie's show.
I was watching. I was being all prepped.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. And you know, in all seriousness, the short story is I helped indigenous peoples in Ecuador win a historic pollution judgment against Chevron back in 2011 for $9.5 billion. Since that time, Chevron has used 60 law firms, 2,000 lawyers, and probably about $2-3 billion to try to demonize, criminalize me, and attack me, and really destroy my life. And it's culminated over the last 2 years of me being put under house arrest without being convicted of a crime. Not by the government, but by a private Chevron law firm called Seward and Kissel. Now, you might be saying, what the F?
I don't understand.
How does that happen in America?
I saw how it happened, but I still don't understand how you are literally stuck in your house based on no due process. Like I
have an ankle bracelet. This is the battery. This is the battery. I stick this around the bracelet is on my left ankle. It's shackled. It's a black thing, and it hasn't come off for 659 days. I
do criminal defense. I'm familiar with the bracelet.
Okay, so you know,
I am.
Usually electronic monitoring is like an alternative to prison. In my case, it's designed, since I didn't commit a crime and I've never committed a crime and I'm only charged with a misdemeanor, it's really designed to keep me locked by Chevron, to keep me locked up so I can't do my human rights work successfully, as I had been doing, and continue to hold the company accountable by enforcing the Ecuador judgment against their assets in other countries. When I was charged criminally by this judge in the United States, I was in Canada working with lawyers there to enforce the Ecuador judgment. And I had to come back, and I was shocked that they locked me up. I'm the only person in America, lawyer or non-lawyer, who's been deprived of his liberty prior to trial on a misdemeanor. And it's been almost 2 years. The max sentence, by the way, ever given a lawyer convicted of what I'm charged with is 90 days of home confinement.
Right. So if and when this does get somewhere, there's a likelihood that you're still going to get time. Now, the question is, would they give you time served?
Well, I think they should obviously let me go at that point based on the time I've already spent at home for a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
That's not really what this is about. From the
it's reprisal. It's reprisal, right? I mean, so
retaliation is punishment.
Talk a little bit about the background of the case in Ecuador and how you got involved in it and what Chevron was doing to the people there.
Okay. By the way, my name is misspelled on your.
It is. Oh, did I?
There's no
I have the
N.
N. All right.
The second.
Not here. Do you see? This is me.
No,
that was him.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Me?
So I'm.
Then you say attorney, non-attorney. I get it. No, I'm just joking.
We're saying.
So this is what happened. Texaco, which is now owned by Chevron, went into the Ecuadorian Amazon in the 60s and signed a contract. Thank you. To drill over a 1,500 square mile area, and they over 30 years, by design, this was not an accident. They deliberately dumped literally 16 billion gallons of cancer-causing oil waste into rivers and streams that indigenous peoples relied on for their drinking water, their bathing, and their fishing. When they started to do this deliberate dumping, many of the indigenous leaders approached the Texaco engineers and said, what is this? Like, what's this black stuff in our water? And the Texaco engineers had a policy to tell them that it was like milk, it contained vitamins, and they had nothing to worry about. The level of abuse is something I really had never even seen before or witnessed or even heard about. And over years, there was just this mass industrial poisoning of what had been a pristine, beautiful rainforest, a place where the people who lived there didn't need any money to be rich. I mean, I tell that to children. I often go speak in schools, and it's like, one of the questions I ask kids is like, can you imagine a world where you can be rich and not have money? Okay. This was that place.
Yeah.
People had no money, but they had food, they had clean water, they had, the medicines of the forest, the shelter, culture, happiness, prosperity. And it was all, thousands of years of this was literally wiped out in a matter of 10 years because Texaco went in and played God and decided to save $3 a barrel on their production costs. They were going to dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing oil waste into the waters that people needed to survive. And to this day, I mean, no one knows how many people have actually died because the data is so, limited. But I can tell you from the data that does exist, plus my anecdotal experience visiting these villages, I've been there 250 times. I assure you thousands of people have died of cancer because of this. It is, as Paul Passimino of Amazon Watch says, it is a slow mass murder. 3-5 people every day, day after day, year after year. Thousands of people are dying, and thousands more will die unless this problem is addressed, unless Chevron complies with the court judgment, pays the money so there can be a cleanup.
Yeah, it's so outrageous, and yet we know this happens, but it really happens to the most vulnerable people that are not in a position to speak up for themselves. And it's very fortunate for them that someone like you took this on. How did you first get into where you were in Ecuador and even know of this?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I learned about this in the early 90s when I was still in law school, and a very good friend of mine's father was from Ecuador. And he was an American citizen, but he's like, he heard about it, and he's like, you can't believe what's going on down in my country. And he organized, his name is Cristobal Bonifaz. He organized a trip of lawyers and scientists to go do an investigation. And we all went down there in April of 1993. There's pictures of me on that trip. I wish you had them to put up. Didn't have the gray hair I do now. But, we toured the area and we witnessed what can only be described as an apocalyptic nightmare. I mean, there were literally lakes and pools of oil on the ground of the forest that had been left there by Texaco. They had built 1,000 open air unlined toxic waste pits. They dumped the waste from the, when you drill a well, all the stuff comes up from the ground. You got to put that stuff somewhere. And they would put it in these waste pits that leached into the soils and groundwater. And they also put pipes in the side of many of them, and they ran off. It rains a lot in the forest. So when it would rain, they would run the contents into the nearby rivers and streams. And they set up a system to deliberately pollute and poison the ecosystem, and you might not know this, but there's a whole international movement now to make ecocide a fifth atrocity crime, like genocide.
Yeah.
Ecocide. And ecocide is defined by most as the deliberate destruction of the natural environment such that it can no longer sustain human life. And what Chevron did in this part of Ecuador, to me, is the very definition of ecocide.
Yeah. And that's probably not the only place that they're doing that. I mean, this is something that's probably going on in how many places?
Well, it's funny you say that, because there's a friend of mine, Dr. Nan Greer, who's in the process of doing a study of all of Chevron's environmental problems around the world. And she's discovered some devastating evidence that in dozens of countries around the world, Chevron is facing massive liabilities for polluting, not just Ecuador. I think Ecuador might be the worst because it was like deliberate and it went on for so long, and the environment's such a delicate ecosystem that's really the lungs of the planet, and there's indigenous peoples. I mean, there's so many factors that come together down there, but they do this in a lot of countries.
Yeah, it's really disgusting, and then they get away with it, and yet it seems that the government has been taken over by them. I think they handed their case off to Chevron. So that's what I need you to really walk me through is how can this be happening? Okay. Like, I don't understand.
This is the craziest part. I think it's insane. Yeah. Basically, Chevron wanted to figure out a way to stop me from doing my work. So they sued me in the US, they denied me a jury, and a judge found that I had bribed a trial judge in Ecuador, which is totally false, and it's been rejected by 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada who've actually looked at the evidence. But this one judge, this one US trial judge, determined that, and on the basis of that, he imposed court costs on me in favor of Chevron. And I didn't have the money. I'm talking about millions of dollars. I mean, I didn't have the money. Chevron then got him to issue an order to get control of my computer and cell phone on the theory that I was hiding money, and they knew that was BS. But what they really wanted from those devices was to find out our strategy, where we were going to file lawsuits to enforce the judgment, communications among attorneys, all the attorney-client privilege information that is sacrosanct in the legal profession.
Right.
So rather than turn over my computer and cell phone to Chevron, I appealed the order and asked Judge Kaplan to stay his order. And while his order that I was appealing was pending, he charged me with criminal contempt of court for not complying with his order, the lawfulness I was challenging on appeal. That's never happened in America before. That's my crime.
Right. And then they brought in a private firm.
Under what's an obvious pretext.
So how is it that they're prosecuting you with an outside firm? Like I don't understand how you can do that.
Yeah, this is another key point. When a judge charges a lawyer with criminal contempt of court, it's in theory, he's disobeyed a court order, but it's such a arrogant way that the lawyer went about it. It's criminal as opposed to civil contempt, which results in a fine, not jail. I don't think what I did is civil contempt, much less criminal contempt. But a judge is required to take the charges to the regular federal prosecutor, in this case, the SDNY in New York. The SDNY rejected the case, refused to prosecute me. So Judge Kaplan, Louis A. Kaplan's the name of the judge, he appointed a private law firm to prosecute me, which astounded me. You would think if the regular feds don't want to go, it ends, right? No. He appoints a private law firm. They asked for me to be locked up. And I started to research the law firm after I got locked up in my home, and I realized they had extensive and close financial ties to the oil and gas industry, including to Chevron. And that Chevron, they admitted 7 months after they locked me up that Chevron had been a client of the firm in 2018, the year before they locked me up. So I'm being prosecuted by Chevron. This is the first corporate prosecution in U.S. history. I believe it is illegal and unconstitutional. But Kaplan, who charged me, also appointed the judge, Loretta Preska, instead of going through the random case selection process, which is required by rules here. Loretta Preska is a leader of the Federalist Society. Chevron is a major funder of the Federalist Society, which is a pro-corporate, right-wing legal group. So I'm being prosecuted by a Chevron law firm. The judge has financial ties to Chevron, and the charging judge, whose charges are rejected by the regular prosecutor, also has investments in Chevron. So this is a Chevron show through and through. It's not a fair proceeding. It's not a fair trial. And it's an embarrassment, I think, for our country. But it's happening, and I'm really asking everyone to notice it and to step in and raise hell about it, because the only thing that's going to stop it is public outcry and some actions by congresspersons, by the Department of Justice. But people need to stand up, man. This is so wrong. It is such a violation of the rule of law. It is so inconsistent with the values of any kind of democracy. But yet it's happening, and happening in particular to me and my family. So we need help. We need people to speak out.
Okay, so tell me, what was the judge's name again?
The judge who charged me is Louis A. Kaplan.
And that's why you're having the contempt charge. This is the person who is holding you in criminal contempt of court.
That's
is
correct.
This person? Yeah.
He's charged me. He's charged you.
Right.
I haven't been found guilty yet.
No,
but we won't have a jury. But yeah.
I mean, but you've already basically been now incarcerated for 20 months for contempt. I mean, that's already outrageous, even if you were in contempt.
Speaking with Steve Donziger and Climate
Exactly
Justice.
Right.
And I think it's very important, Steve. Stephen, if you're really, you touched on a very important issue here, which is something that has become, I think, probably a very overlooked part of our electoral process in this country, is how much money and the kinds of money that a lot of our judges are getting, whether at the federal level, at the state level. And when it comes to corporate special interests, I mean, everybody's aware of just how corporate bought Amy Coney Barrett is to be on the Supreme Court. But I don't think people really understand that this trickles down throughout the entire judicial system. And today it is systemic to the point of, I try to tell people the best way that I can explain what corporate special interest does to our society is no different than, let's take a step back to the 1980s and the 1990s. You've got the Zenith stereo system. You've got a whole bunch of different stuff. And when you look behind the TV, you've literally got 50 wires and cords literally entangled amongst each other. You don't even know where to begin or how to unwind it.
Jason's office still looks like that.
There you go. And so that to me is not just our electoral system, but that's really our judicial system. And big money seems to be what is dominating in a way that I don't think people are really grasping. You mentioned the Federalist Society and the lengths that they are going to in order to basically, I think they're just trying to use you as an example. They are making an example.
Well, they don't want anyone else to be doing this. Correct. They don't want anybody else.
They're weaponizing.
I was just going to ask you, they've never paid. Chevron has still not paid, right? Like that's the thing. They still haven't complied with their judgment.
They owe the money and they won't pay. And now, they're spending a lot of money, but not to pay the judgment to the people they poison. They're spending the money on law firms to attack those who held them accountable. I mean, it's an outrage. Right. And, but it's look, let's be frank here. We're not naive. This is a corporate playbook invented by Chevron, used by the entire fossil fuel industry to try to intimidate people into not challenging them. Okay, for their pollution and the harms they are causing our planet, so they can try to wrest a few more years of profits out of this dying industry by intimidating lawyers and intimidating human rights defenders. That's their calculation, and they think they can get away with it. It's up to us to make that not work.
Right. It reminds me of that movie Class Action, where they had figured out that it was cheaper to just have people die and sue than to actually fix the car. So they've actually calculated that it's more efficient for them to spend their money going after you than it would be to pay what they owe.
But it's my job and the job of those who care to make sure that calculation doesn't turn out how they hope it does. In other words, to raise the cost to them of this kind of outrageous behavior to such a degree that it actually makes it worth it to pay the judgment rather than continue to attack the lawyers. But it's a challenge, no doubt.
What do we do?
Yeah, well, we have a question from Jamie Friend. Is there, obviously the Supreme Court, that's a whole other issue, but she mentions the ACLU. Are there any major organizations that are speaking out on your behalf? I haven't noticed any major political figures speaking out on your behalf, aside, obviously, like I said, from Susan Sarandon and Marianne Williamson. It doesn't really seem like I've seen that many people really putting this front and center. Are there any organizations that are doing their part to try to back you up in this circumstance?
Well, we need more support. There's no doubt, but we have gotten a fair amount of support as of late, last 2-3 months. I mean, several human rights groups have written a letter to the DOJ asking for them to review the case, including Amnesty International, Global Witness, Amazon Watch, a bunch of really big environmental and human rights groups. Apart from that, 6 congresspersons, including AOC, Jim McGovern, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, and Jamie Raskin, have signed a letter to Merrick Garland demanding a review of the case. 68 Nobel laureates have demanded the case be dismissed, and really hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers have spoken out and filed all sorts of complaints against Judge Kaplan. So we have support. We need to grow that support. But I think you raise an issue when you say you haven't heard of it. Well, I think one reason why many people haven't heard of this case is it's being ignored by the big media. I mean, the New York Times reports on human rights violations all over the world. My apartment is a 30-minute walk from their newsroom, and they've never sent a reporter here. I'm a Harvard Law grad. I was in the same graduating class as President Obama. Not that that means anything, except for this point. Wouldn't you think someone who came out of Harvard Law, who's won the biggest environmental judgment ever and has been locked up in a Chevron prosecution for almost 2 years in a misdemeanor? I'm sorry. You can hate my guts. That's a newsworthy story for the New York Times. Where the hell are they? Do your job. I have reporters flying over here from Europe, 4,000 miles from Germany to interview me in my living room. New York Times, again, a 30-minute walk away. They don't come. So that's why you haven't heard of it.
Well, yeah, they're beholden to the same people that are prosecuting you.
And
it's all the same people.
And this is a great point. When people wonder about, what stopped Obama, Jamie Dimon and a few other people is what stopped him. It's very easy to get seduced by the allure of Wall Street and everything that can come with it. And I don't think people really grasp what that means. I mean, I could tell people to watch the movie The Devil's Advocate, and that in a way just kind of, but it kind of just gives you an idea of how even the most well-intended person can be overwhelmed by the whole prospect of becoming, one of the masters of the universe, if you will, if you simply turn a blind eye to all the atrocities that those that make you put you in that position are committing on a daily basis. The people who are willing to say, no, I am not taking this. I'm going to fight this. That's why we were talking right before you came on about the benevolence of sorts of Kashama Sawant out in Seattle. The fact that she is willing to challenge power in a way that almost nobody else in this country is willing to do, not even Bernie Sanders, I think really speaks to the fact that it's so easy, it seems like, to buy people off. I mean, everybody has a price, but you know what? When somebody like Jeff Bezos decides that he doesn't want to pay for his failed investment, he just buys off a United States senator to basically write legislation to say, yeah, he's getting a $10 billion subsidy. Oh, and by the way, when I get that money, I'm going to go buy the biggest major movie studio in Los Angeles. So to me, it's the corruption within the system is embedded in so many different ways. Your case just happens to be one that is really caught in the crossfire of big industry that will not tolerate under any circumstances getting in the way of their bottom line.
Yeah, you said something really interesting that I caught in an interview that you did, and I wrote it down. I actually had to go back and listen to it because I put little quotes on it, and I thought it was really cool. And you said that what was going on in Ecuador is this idea of privatizing profits but socializing costs. And I thought that was really, really clever. And I was wondering if you could sort of just explain that. I mean, I understand what you were talking about, but in terms of the case, if you could talk about how that works.
By the way, if anyone wants to help, go to donzigerdefense.com. Sorry.
Oh, there we go. No, that's good. Yeah.
You can learn more about the case. You can donate to the Legal Defense Fund, or just if you don't want to donate, totally cool. Come anyway, sign up. You'll get our newsletter. We need to build this. It's not just about me. It's about the movement. It's about, stopping global warming and dealing with the climate issue and saving our planet. And obviously, it's about environmental justice, accountability for these polluters.
Yeah.
Okay, to answer that question, though, thank you for that. What Chevron has done in Ecuador is they went in, drilled, took the good stuff, that is the marketable oil, ran it through pipelines to refineries, brought it up to the United States, sold it, made billions of dollars. The bad part, that is the water production, the drilling muds, the stuff that comes with oil, wherever you drill, there's waste. They just dump that into the environment at almost zero cost to themselves. If this was the United States, they would have had to pay for a proper waste disposal, at least in most states, and it would have cost them an additional many millions of dollars to do it that way. So to save a certain amount of money, that is to increase their already high profits to obscene levels, they decided to socialize the costs onto the most vulnerable people of the planet, indigenous groups. They just dumped it and let them deal with it. And, call it what you want. To me, it's privatizing profits, socializing costs. Another way to look at it is they're stealing. They're stealing. In other words, they took the wealth of the people in Ecuador out of the country, enriched their shareholders and the management, and left the people who had this totally prosperous environment for thousands of years with a completely poisoned existence. And they become impoverished, and they've had to move away, and they've lost much of their culture and their language and their cohesion and their lives.
See, that to me is a genocide. That's a genocide.
It's a genocide or ecocide or whatever you want to call it.
Their people are dying when they lose their access to water.
It's a crime. And the people who made these decisions and carried them out, I think, are criminally, they're not just civilly liable, they're criminally culpable in my mind.
Yeah. And where is the government of Ecuador in this? Like, where do they fall into any of this? You got a ruling in your favor there.
Yeah.
And where are they in terms of enforcing that?
Well, this is a private lawsuit between private citizens and a private company, just to be clear. The government is not a party to the lawsuit.
No, but in terms of enforcing the judgment that, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But the government of Ecuador is an important player here, and they really should, A, do more to deal with the problem, and B, defend the hell out of their own country's courts and the judgment, and they have done that to a degree. But ultimately, I want to be very clear. The one entity that made the decision to dump the toxic waste is Chevron, not the government of Ecuador. Right. Chevron is 100% responsible. It doesn't mean the government shouldn't be doing things in the meantime. They should, okay? It is their country and people are dying. And the Ecuador government needs to do a lot more. But, every time they do more, Chevron just says, oh, it's not our responsibility. It's their responsibility. They're dealing with it. We don't have to pay the judgment. It's a little bit delicate, but Chevron needs to pay the judgment. Ecuador's government needs to do everything it can in the meantime to save lives.
Yeah.
A good friend of the show, Jordan Chariton, who you may know of Status Quo, he's been covering the poison pipelines in Flint, Michigan for, I think, 7 years now. And it took him for years for him to get a single story in The Intercept in order for them to run it. When you're coming for big oil, they will buy off whoever they have to buy off in order to make a story go away.
I've seen that happen time and time again with the media over the last 10, 15 years. Reporters start down with a story and then it just dies.
Well, we will always hark back to the two biggest legislative things that happened over the course of what I guess you would say is when Reaganomics really took shape. But the elimination of the Fairness Doctrine in '87, and then, of course, the Telecom Act in '96, was really the power consolidation period where, corporate media just became the fourth estate, where if you need anything protected in terms of corporate special interests, you just ship it to MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, and they will do your bidding. for the price. And that's what happens. They will not cover this because it is not in the corporate special interest of those who give to these shows in order for the story to get out there. And the truth is, this story's everywhere. We all know what roughshod, big oil is running over this planet. But now we have an opportunity to really highlight just how ruthless they are by trying to rewrite the rule of law in the United States, because that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
We see people everyone would always talk about how, Trump is pillaging the Constitution and all that. The stuff that doesn't get talked about is really what pillages the Constitution, because they don't want this to become a story. They don't want people to actually think that this country isn't bought off by special interests. It is. And if we can do our part, as Katie has done her part, and everyone else does their part, this story needs to get out there, because this is serious, and this will have far-reaching ramifications if this is allowed to continue, because it's only getting worse. I mean, as you know, Exxon knew back in 1977 what they were doing, and they were able to make it go away. You can only imagine how much worse this is going to get. I mean, we live in Florida, so you can only imagine how devastating of an environmental circumstance we live in every day. If we even attempt to fight back against Big Sugar, NextEra Energy, any of these major organizations, and we have an impact, I can't even imagine the type of hammer that they're going to bring down against any type of environmental movement here. So we must set the precedent.
And look, this is why these corporate interests have focused so much in the last 20, 30 years on controlling the courts, because ultimately many of these battles are going to be decided by judges, and they want those judges to be pro-corporate. And, you saw this, obviously you saw what Mitch McConnell did to Merrick Garland when Obama nominated him. You saw what Trump did over the last 4 years working with Mitch McConnell to stack the entire federal judiciary with young, right-wing, and many unqualified judges. And you can't go into a federal appellate court in the United States anymore and get a fair panel if you're representing poor people or victims of human rights or victims of pollution. I mean, the panels are it doesn't mean you can't win, but it's harder to win. It structurally favors the corporation all the time. The judges almost always come out of the corporate law firms, or they're former federal prosecutors with kind of a conservative bent. I'm generalizing, but I'm telling you, this is true to a great extent now in our country. And that's why I think people need to, among other things, and there's been great citizen activism and great victories. I mean, you saw what happened at the Exxon and Chevron shareholder meetings yesterday. They got spanked by their own shareholders over climate issues. So there's so many ways to make progress, but we need to understand that if we don't focus on making our courts fair, as opposed to just a weapon for the corporate right, we are not going to be able to solve many of these problems that really pose an existential threat to our existence, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, the judiciary has definitely been very contaminated at an exponential rate over the past, I'd say, few years, in a way that it's just going to have such lasting repercussions. And I look at the Supreme Court justices that were appointed by Trump, and it's freaking me out. Like the fact that Kavanaugh never tried a case. He never tried a case.
Can you imagine?
I mean, no. And it's like, I sit here and
has Amy Coney Barrett even tried a case?
No, she hasn't. These are people that are basically being bred to be in the positions that they're in. They're essentially being groomed into these positions. Years. And it's a little Stepfordish and creepy. And, I sit here and I always have Thurgood Marshall over my shoulder. And I think, this is somebody who tried 32 cases before the Supreme Court, before he was appointed to the Supreme Court. And now we have justices that have never tried a case. And I just think.
You make an excellent point. Thurgood Marshall, one of the greatest lawyers and jurists in the history of our country, maybe the greatest, given what he had to overcome, what he was facing, would never, in today's political environment, get on the Supreme Court.
No.
Even though he's more qualified than anyone currently on it.
Yeah. But way too revolutionary, way too representing regular people. But,
the corporate world when he got on the court, did not have the power and control of our government like it does today. And I can tell you, I mean, I'm older than y'all, but I'm not going to tell you my age. But I've seen a trajectory since Ronald Reagan was elected of just increasing corporate consolidation of power in the United States of America, to the point where, I mean, in my situation, I'm being prosecuted criminally by Chevron. And, this is the fundamental battle of our time. There's a lot of battles. There's income inequality. There's police racism. There's so many problems right now in our country. But I can tell you that the corporate control of our society either creates many of these problems or exacerbates existing ones to such a degree you can't really propose serious solutions to them, because our legislative branches don't know how to solve problems anymore because they're so worried about the corporate contributions. So we have a serious fundamental problem with how our democracy, if you want to call it that, is structured at the moment. And there's just way too much money and too much control by the rich and by the corporations to really do things in a fair way. And these problems just manifest again and again and again over all sorts of issues year after year, and nothing seems to get better. And I'm telling you, in my view, it's because of what I'm dealing with personally. There's just the corporations, the unlimited money has created a situation where I really question whether we really have a democracy anymore. I mean, we have some form of a distorted democracy, but we just don't have a legislative branch that can deal with our problems, in any kind of fundamental way.
I don't think we actually have a democracy. I don't even think we have a functioning republic. I think we have a very dysfunctional republic. And the way that we know this, and this is actually, it's really just basic. It's just common sense, right? So if you have 3/4 of the American people support something like, let's just say, Medicare for all, it could be legalization of marijuana, it could be whatever it is, or getting out of all the wars, or whatever it is. And yet those things don't happen. So if you have the majority of people want something and those things don't happen, there is a disconnect in between that is proving to me that we have a dysfunctioning republic. So I don't, it doesn't need to, we could sit there and try to figure out why and how, but it's clearly not functioning. We have representatives that have approval ratings under 18%, but yet they keep getting reelected.
Yes.
So obviously something's very broken or fixed, whatever,
I'll add this to your very important point. It's broken in the eyes of the vast majority of people. Yeah. It's working perfectly fine in the eyes of the elites who are profiting from the broken system in which we live.
Yeah.
We talk about that. They broke it deliberately. They don't want it to function like a real democracy because that would threaten some of their profits.
Yeah. Yeah. And then ultimately what we're seeing, and we talk about this a lot, is what I consider to be sort of the death throes of late stage capitalism, and when you start talking like this and you get called out, communist, I was called a communist for supporting Medicare for all. I've been called all sorts of things in the past couple of years, but
I have a good friend who's in the chat who, she's a Republican and she thinks that we're going to turn into Venezuela.
Whatever. So, but it's really what we're talking about is just completely unfettered capitalism. It is. And that has now basically corrupted and infected every branch of government and the fourth estate, which to me is something that that's one of the reasons I'm so, passionate about Julian Assange's case, is because I feel like once you completely get rid of the fourth estate, that's it. I feel like that's kind of like a game over situation that I don't think people understand. But
our channel suffers immensely from suppression because we did do an Assange telethon, and that was just kind of
I did an Assange telethon.
Yeah, kind of put the red flag with Katie.
Oh, Katie co-hosted it. No, it was great. It was just it was once Merrick Garland got confirmed, it was basically the ask was we were flooding the Department of Justice.
I remember that.
Yeah, just drop the charges against you. Yeah, it's good to have an ask, but it's always just more about just the education and information and having people discussing the case. But I feel like this about your case, I think this is something that's very important and we need to be harping on. And I'm just, other than having people harassing Judge Kaplan, what else can we really, what can we be doing to help? Yeah.
So again, if you go to donzigerdefense.com, the main ask right now is to get the Department of Justice to take the prosecution over from the Chevron law firm.
Okay.
You know, probably you're going to laugh at this, but I'm probably the only lawyer in America begging to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. That would make my day. Okay?
Right. Because they would drop it because it's ridiculous.
They would drop it. But even if they didn't, I could at least deal with a professional.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't have locked me up. I mean, first of all, they declined the case, as I mentioned. So I would assume if they take it back, they'll drop it. But even if they don't, I can at least negotiate with somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chevron lawyer won't even negotiate with me. I mean, about some sort of resolution. Hey, maybe I will give you the computer. Let's set up a protocol. Let me off house arrest so I can be a lawyer or do my human rights work. I mean, I need the DOJ to get this case back. So if you go to Donziger Defense, you know, we have a way to contact the DOJ, and we're asking people to do it. Now, will it happen? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's the DOJ. But again, we're trying to generate as much pressure as we can.
Yeah.
Susan Sarandon, Marianne, you know, Sting, Roger Waters, the Nobel laureates, Judge Williams. I mean, we really do have a lot of people making this ask right now, and they have definitely heard us because one of my lawyers has been interacting with someone over there. So we just keep needing to insist they uphold the rule of law and take the case out of the hands of the private Chevron law firm.
Yeah, it's just a matter of due process, people. It's all we're asking for is due process. It's really not that complicated.
I mean, you can have it, whatever opinion you might have of me. I mean, I hope it's positive, but that's not the issue. Okay, the issue is we cannot have corporate prosecutions in the United States of America. That is the number one issue right now.
Right. Yeah. That's up there, like with the fact that we have like private corrections institutions and it's a for-profit system. And it's just, we're going to be completely subcontracted out. All government functions are going to be for-profit and subcontracted out. Like you're going to have to like have special insurance to be able to get the fire department to come out. And if you don't have full house coverage, they're only going to come out with the small hose instead of the large hose. I mean, this is getting crazy to me that we're privatizing our judicial system.
We're privatizing everything. There is there's nothing that's untouchable at this point, and it's been like this for a while. It seeps into everything. It seeps into our sports. It seeps into obviously the healthcare system has completely been overrun.
Yeah.
At some point, the dam is going to break. Now, is it just going to happen in one fell swoop, or is it going to be
we're working
slow,
on it? We're chipping away at it.
Yeah, but and again, there has to be a united front, because I think one of the most difficult things for a lot of people to do is check their egos at the door and have thick skin. It's certainly the biggest problem that I see, particularly on the political left, is this idea that you have to understand that if we're getting anywhere, and I mean anywhere, you have to have a non-corporate, non-partisan labor movement.
Yeah,
that
people
is
movement.
it. That is the only way this is going to change, because there are a lot more of us together than there are of those in charge.
Yes.
But if you allow yourself to be divided along whatever political lines there may be,
the red team and the blue team, we're not big fans of the red and the blue team.
and then it seeps into even deeper divides than that: progressive versus moderate. Conservative versus libertarian.
And I have an important question.
Sure.
So let's say you were able to get rid of the ankle monitor and you were free tomorrow, as you should be. What's next? Like, what are you working on? What are you doing? Like, what would you be doing if not this?
So much to do. I mean, I get contacted constantly by human rights victims to help them organize cases. I consult with groups that want to, do proxy battles with corporations over climate issues. I like to write. I want to do a book. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, I'm dying to get back to my work. I mean, it's not like I've left it. I mean, I'm still working on house arrest and doing all sorts of very productive things and gaining tons of support and talking to you guys and others, doing interviews. So it's not like I'm just sitting on my couch. I mean, I'm actually as involved now as I've ever been. And more people are paying attention, people who had not paid attention before. So we're building, we continue to build, but of course, with the ankle bracelet off, I could do a lot more. And I think, I don't mean to say this in a way that makes me look good, but like, that's what Chevron fears. They don't want me to be free because they don't, look, we were successful. Let's just remember that. This is happening because we won. Let's be honest. Okay, they're attacking me because we won.
Yeah.
And what I have to go in a second, but what I want people to take away from this is, even though I'm locked up, think big picture. Okay, we won the case. They're taking extreme and I believe nakedly corrupt measures to come after me. They're being exposed little by little. The trial they just happened, which had last week against me, they looked terrible. Everyone could see what was happening. And we just need to keep speaking out about it. And we keep needing to support the people of Ecuador, most importantly, who are dying from their pollution, as well as their lawyers, including first and foremost me, because I'm locked up. So it's all connected.
Yeah.
You know, we all need to watch it and understand it. And again, go to donzigerdefense.com to learn more. But we need to build this movement. When I say this movement, I mean there's tons going on to deal with climate change around the world. You know, but this particular movement is the movement to protect the rule of law, such that those who do the front lines work are not going to be attacked and made bankrupt or disbarred or locked up, because all those things have happened to me.
Yeah.
So that's this movement, and it's a critical piece of the larger movement to save the planet, because if you can't, the lawyers can't hold the polluters accountable, we're never going to save the planet, in my opinion.
That's their goal. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
They don't want people doing this work.
No.
Can't drink oil.
No. Well, you know what? No, but it's like the Lorax. We're going to be living in a bubble and have to pay for air. I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Stephen, last question before you go. Yeah. Obviously, it's not easy to be under house arrest, especially to the length that you have been under house arrest. How have you? Although,
in all fairness, a lot for the past couple of years, there was a good solid year where a lot of people were essentially under house arrest. This past year is not. You haven't. Of all the times to be stuck in your house, you've missed the least.
Well, it all depends.
That's what I'm saying.
It all depends on how much square footage he has in his New York City apartment. You got to keep that in mind as well. How have you been able to deal with it? Because obviously it's not easy. I am sure being able to have a lot of people reaching out to communicate with you definitely helps. But what has that experience been like for you?
Well, it's been difficult, but I'm really fortunate. You know, I have a great family. My wife Lauren's son Matthew, plus an extended family, plus everyone who cares, plus my clients, plus the journalists who want to hear my message, like y'all, lawyers, Nobel laureates. You know, I've been extremely and vitally engaged in the work while under house arrest. Now, I hate being under house arrest, but I'm also, you know, my wife and I also decided that we were going to do our best to create some degree of happiness in our home every day. And I think we've largely succeeded, you know, but I need my passport back and I need to get back to work. And I need my freedom. And you know, more importantly, our society shouldn't put up with a situation where anybody, me or anyone else, is put in this situation anymore.
No, free Steve, everybody. We need to free Steve.
Go to donzigerdefense.com to help Stephen out. We're going to keep spreading the word. We thank everybody that has done that. Obviously,
we'll put this on our website.
Yeah. One other thing is, if you really want to get regular updates, follow me on Twitter at @Donziger, and I'm tweeting multiple times a day about stuff. There's a lot of interesting things happening all the time on this case.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that, and we'll connect it on our stuff, and we'll put it in the description. And
congratulations to y'all for the work you do. It's important, and I'm really honored to.
Where are you from?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Wow.
Because he says y'all. Look, let me tell you something. He could be sitting in New York, but when you say y'all, then you know that somebody's from somewhere they're from. Like that.
You can't take the southern thing out of the.
Well, as a born Floridian, he understands your pain.
I'm a second generation native Floridian, and you're not that much older than me. You're not that much older than me.
I'm probably quite a bit older. What part of Florida are you from?
North Miami Beach. Second generation. My dad was born in Miami. I was born in 1971.
Okay, well, I got you beat by many years.
Wow.
Many years? I don't know.
Well, a few years.
I will tell you this. You look infinitely younger live in person than you do in your photo. Like you look like, I think.
Well, I think your spirits are definitely perking up, and if there's anything else that we could do to help,
thank you. We will
certainly
stay
look forward
tuned.
to. Yes, we will definitely be in touch. Please keep us posted. And guys, once again, Donziger on Twitter is a great place to follow.
And everybody
Stephen.
be aware of what's going on.
And please, if you can, in whatever capacity you are able to help, and we certainly want to get this out to as many people as we can. If I can find this thing one more time, it is DonzigerDefense.com. Anything that you could do to help Stephen out. This is a monumental case. Can't stress that enough. We have to do everything in our capacity to fight back against big oil, and this is one of the ways that we can. We
Thank
have
you.
beaten them in a landmark case. Now we got to make sure that we can continue to beat them going forward.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Well, hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. Have a great
Bye.
evening. Bye-bye. Well, needless to say, he really has done he's done a real service to the country.
And yet I will say, I do think it's amusing that I had to text Katie in order to get him to get on this, off of her, because he was engaged in conversation.
No, and that's fine. But at least Katie, but listen, you texted her and he was in here within like 5 minutes.
Well, I texted her and I'm like, where's my guest?
Well, she probably didn't realize like how over the time they were going. So to their credit,
they're just sitting there shooting the shit.
Well,
she don't care.
Great interview. I mean, he was here with us for almost an hour. I mean, again, I thought it was, it really meant a lot.
Oh, I find him like totally like he's adorable.
That's the type of person that is putting their livelihood there. And again, you never know.
I think of him the way I think of people like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning or people that are basic, or John Kiriakou.
Yeah.
People that put their own liberty at stake for what is the right thing to do. And Steve wasn't even purposefully doing that. He was just, he just won. He won a case. Like, that's just crazy to me that he's being the reprisal, and that it's just being it's like a kangaroo court. That's not even a real thing.
Well, that's most of
Judge appoints a private firm that's run by this is the most ridiculous. And we say that we're bringing liberty to other countries.
This is the thing about any of these
what a joke.
Special groups. It's no different than when we made a big deal about the Center for American Progress. Who do you think funds Neera Tanden's organization? It's people like the ones that fund the Federalist Society. They just, again, it depends on what the cause is, what they're trying to accomplish.
But it represents big oil, big pharma, military industrial complex, big banks. It represents those people. It's not in our interest.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.